Recording. All right, so welcome everybody. My name is Christine and I am the Friends of Albert Einstein PTO president, and I thank you all for coming tonight. I will be your host, and I will let the interpreter Karina say a few words and then we can get started.
Hola, buenas tardes. Estamos ofreciendo interpretación simultánea al español durante esta reunión. Si desea escuchar la interpretación en español, haga clic en el botón Interpretation o Interpretación en la parte inferior derecha de la pantalla Zoom. Verá un icono de globo terráqueo. Si se está uniendo a través de la aplicación Zoom para smartphone, seleccione su idioma haciendo clic en More o Más o en los tres puntos en la esquina inferior derecha de la pantalla. Seleccione Language Interpretation, interpretación de...
So Karina, I believe everybody has the option now to choose you. Should I continue then? Are we good, Karina? I'm assuming so, since I can't hear her.
Yeah,
Okay.
So just procedurally, she'll do the intro and then you'll enable the interpretation once she's done, because once you enable it, it puts her in the interpretation room. So.
Oh, I hope I didn't enable it.
Anyway.
Did I enable it prematurely, or is everything okay?
Yeah, it's enabled now. So it was a little early, but yeah, I think it's fine.
Okay, all right. Well, thank you again, everybody, for coming. I will open it up to administration. I know we have both of the principals on here, so I'll let you guys have the floor and talk about any updates or anything that you'd like to share, and then we can have Grace do the presentation and I'll do the screen share, if that's okay. Grace? Okay.
Do you want to start, Principal Trackus? You want me to go?
Go ahead.
All right. Hi, welcome everybody. Thank you for being here tonight. We have been very busy over at elementary. I first want to thank our Friends team for our kind of carnival little morning and afternoon celebration yesterday. They dressed up and gave the kids stickers. It was very fun. That's been going on. We did the coin challenge that was also sponsored by Friends, where we raised over $4,000 for the Monarch School, and we are celebrating with a free dress day for all of our students on Wednesday of next week. I think it's the 1st, and the classes will be having a pizza party tomorrow. Who each of the class in a grade level that earned the most coins. Let's see. We started also today, and not great weather for it. We started our semester 2 youth trainers. And so each semester, our 5th graders, they divide in 2, and half the 5th graders take the first semester and half the 5th graders take the second semester. And they develop their youth trainers PE lessons, and they actually implement and teach those to the lower grade children. And so our semester 2 kids just started, which is always exciting. It was a little windy challenge today, but they are ready for it. We have began our field trips and assemblies. We had, I think it was a 1st grade assembly today with an orchestra, quartet. And so that's been fun to get the kids back into those events with the field trips and assemblies. We've had kindergarten mime activity with the kids, and basically they're all connected to their IB units of inquiry, so that they're just bringing that experiential component to the units of inquiry that we are happy to be able to do again. Coming up, we have student-led conferences, which will be the week prior to spring break, March 22nd through 24th. And as an IB school, we have what we call student-led conferences, where students are actually engaging in telling families about their own successes, their own goals, and their own challenges and areas that they want to work on, as taking agency and ownership of their learning. There will be opportunity, though, for parents who do want to have a conference with the teacher. And so that is an option, but we really empower and enable our students to take the lead on these spring conferences. And finally, oh, we had a No Place for Hate identity portrait activity. And I just want to share this because these were an opportunity for kids, all the grades, to create an art piece or a piece that allows them to express who they are and what they like doing, and get a piece of whatever's important to them. And they were phenomenal. They're really amazing. I will have to find a way to get more of those out to you guys to see some of them, because their expression and their creativity is just always, it's remarkable. It goes always beyond than what we expect. And finally, a construction update. We have poured our concrete slab foundation, so it's starting to look like a footprint, and you will see a crane coming in the next couple of weeks, and that will start our steel frame that will be erected from our foundation, which is exciting. It will compromise a bit more of our field for a couple of weeks. So our PE team and Cherie is on how to make that happen for our kids to have as much space as they possibly can. But you'll start to see things arise from the fenced area in not too long of a time. So that is it for me.
Thank you, Principal Bowders, and I'm so happy that you go first, because I try to copy as much as you say in my message, but unfortunately, fortunately, there's a lot of good things going on at the elementary as far as construction and other good things, and there's a lot of good things going on at the middle school. I just want to share with everybody that yesterday, today, and tomorrow, and we want to thank Friends for I don't want to call it the German Jelly Donut Day, but I believe the proper term is Krapfen, or some places they call them Berliners, which was a huge success, not just for our students, but also for our staff. It gave them a little midday snack as we prepared for WASC. And many of you might say, well, what the heck is WASC? Well, it's the Western Association of Schools and Colleges, and it's accreditation for us. And accreditation happens for every high school and every college in North America. And WASC is one of the major players when it comes to accreditation. In the high school level, you need accreditation, successful accreditation, to be able to give credits, meaning that you need accreditation to give grades and to legitimize your school and what your school does during the course of the day. For us at the middle school, for AEA, WASC has also been a choice for us at the middle school level. And if you can just imagine, when we talk about accreditation, it's also for us an educational audit. And we do accreditation on many different levels. We do it with WASC, with the Western Association of Schools and Colleges. And we also do accreditation through the International Baccalaureate Program. We're fortunate enough to be able, and I'll provide a little background and context. Back in 2018 and 2019, we were able to bring WASC and IB together for the first time in North America to do a joint accreditation visit. And we were so excited to do that. And we were able to get the longest term possible, which by the WASC IB standards was 5 years. So today, WASC and IB and accreditation is something that's a continuum for us and for our staff. It helps drive our initiatives and what we do for professional development. Through the WASC and IB accreditation process, they highlight what are areas of strength and what are areas of concerns, things that we can get better at. And it really drives what we do. And that shouldn't be something that just gets pulled off the shelf whenever we're ready for another WASC or IB visit. But that's something that we touch base on routinely throughout the year. And it's a live continuum for us, and how we get better as a school and how we get better as an organization. So to be able to have our Krapfen or Berliners, or however you want to call them, was great, because we had a really, really successful session today with our staff. So I just want to share that with everybody. I also want to thank Miss Amanda Rowe, who I met with earlier about the potential development of a multicultural celebration, which I don't think she may want a lot of people to know, but really this is the brainchild of Tanya Sawicki, who came up with the idea, and I thought it was a great idea. We talked about it months ago. So we're really looking forward to how we can develop a multicultural celebration for AEA with food and dance and celebration from as many representative cultures, countries that we have at AEA. So I just want to thank Amanda, and I want to thank Tanya. Hopefully Tanya can be able to bring us some German folk dancers. I'll try to do whatever I can do on my end with the Greeks. They're a little tougher nut to crack. But we really are looking forward to having a really fun day for all. And that's going to be coming, more information coming soon about the multicultural celebration. And then, something that's, when we talk about providing opportunities, I'm a broken record, you guys know. When we talk about providing opportunities for our kids to stay positively connected, our basketball season is happening right now. We have 4 games tonight. We have 2 games for our B teams, one at 6 o'clock and one at 7 o'clock at the Lemon Grove Recreation Center. And then we also have 2 games for our A teams, again at 6 and 7. And that's going to be at the Monarch School. So we're really excited about boys and girls basketball. We're also excited about boys and girls cheer, which is happening for the first time. So it's pretty cool to be able to see middle school kids in their cheer outfits in school. But just another way to positively connect our kids. I don't know if I shared in our last evening with admin, but we also developed a really cool program for our skater scooter kids. And that's working with a guy from a gentleman from the community, Jim Bell, who's a noted skateboard ramp builder. So we've got kids who are working after school and building ramps and using the little baby shop that we have. And Jim's teaching them how to be safe in a wood shop, because we have a little baby wood shop down there with band saws and table saws and some really nice high-tech equipment. And the kids are, applying their math and their physics and staying connected. So those are just some of the things that we have. We also have a ceramics program that's happening now after school. We have the Bob Ross painting experience. Just some of the things that are happening right now currently, and just to name a few. We're just so happy to have the opportunity to provide these chances for our kids to stay positively connected, and in the IB lens, have that balance piece. So that's some of the happenings at middle school.
Great, thank you very much. And yeah, thank you for the nice intro for the multicultural festival that will be taking place. We will definitely share more information, but just so that everybody knows, it's more of a potluck. And so it is something that we encourage families to bring their favorite food, favorite recipe. It's not going to be staffed by food trucks. It's not going to be staffed by other vendors. It's going to be a taste of the world, but provided by our community. So a little bit more of a potluck style. So keep that in mind as you see more information. I think I need to, let me see. Sorry for this. 1 second, you guys. I think I need to pin the other ASL translator. 1 second. And I will transition it over to Grace to do our presentation. And 1 second. If I can, sorry, bear with me, guys. I will.
Christine, while you're getting ready, maybe I'll just do my quick intro.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon, good evening, friends. I'm Grace Ridgway. I'm the Director of Special Education here at Albert Einstein. I want to say I'm new, but I've actually been here for a couple of months now. And so I've had a really great opportunity to get to know our students, our staff, our 2 schools, and now the opportunity to sit here with you and talk about special education. There's a lot of information. I wanted to start with just starting to talk about what services and support look like at AEA. And if there is a need to come back and talk a little bit more about the actual IEP document in itself, I'm also available to consider looking at presenting that type of information. But tonight, I do want to share, if there are families here that are familiar with the IEP process and the services, this might be old information, but I just want to give you the opportunity to get the information, as well as provide you resources that could benefit and actually give you some more information that's tied to your child's IEP. So I'm going to start with the purpose. I don't see the PowerPoint up.
Yes. Can you guys see that?
Yes.
Okay, great. So are we ready? Is that what you need?
Yes.
Okay.
And this evening, I also have my administrator friends are going to join in the couple slides here and there. So it's a collaborative effort to share with you what our services look like here at AEA. And next slide, please. The purpose of tonight's presentation is to understand the role of special education services and how students qualify for services, and review what services are available across both campuses to support the needs of our students with disabilities. Next slide, please. I know there's a lot of words on this particular slide, but special education has a lot of legal connection. And so what I did was condensed it into one slide. Really, the biggest takeaway is I want you to have as much information as you can, especially for families going through the process or starting the process. As a parent, and as a parent with a child with a disability, I want to make sure our parents have the capacity to really meaningfully participate. And that's really what the law asks us to do, is to encourage our parents to meaningfully participate. And what that means is to ensure that you have some understanding what special education support and services is, and what does it look like for each of our students. And so really, when it comes down to special education, it refers to services, curricula, or instruction designed to meet the needs of our students with disability. A takeaway from this is that there is no one size fits all. All of the programs and the plan that we design for our students are meant to address individual needs. The focus of special ed is not necessarily, and this is one thing that I always share, we're not here to cure a disability, but to identify the disability so that we can provide the proper supports and structures, and hopefully provide them the tools our students need in order to address their barriers to learning. One thing that we are heavy focused on is our least restrictive environment. And by that, I mean, we look at how we are able, or how we need to serve our students. At AEA, our students are general ed students first across any campus. But really, when it comes down to looking at our child's need and where the services need to be provided, we consider the least restrictive in a free, appropriate public education. And so when we are offering our services, you'll often hear our offer of FAPE, which is a free, appropriate public education. We often say in the least restrictive environment following that, and then we list our services. But in general, this is just a quick overview of what IDEA, which is Individual for Disability Act, defines as what special education services looks like across all states, across all counties. Next slide, please. Who qualifies for special education? There are many, there is a particular criteria in order for us to identify students for special education. We have to, first of all, identify based on the 13 documented categories, whether or not our students have a disability. And we also want to ensure that they're not impacted or provided with services just because they're struggling as a student or a reader or a student that is lacking access to general education curriculum. So we are bound to ensure that we exhaust all resources at our general education level, which is we often refer to as Tier 1. Next slide, please. These are the 13 categories of disabilities under IDEA. The last one is the 14th category, but it really implies to early childhood and not necessarily in the state of California. But when we assess our students and we evaluate for determining whether or not they have a disability, it usually falls under one of these 13 categories. A child may qualify under one and possibly have a secondary. We look at what is impacting that student the most. With regards to services, once you qualify under one of these 13 categories, you do have access to services, regardless of what category you qualified under. However, we want to do our best to really match what area, what disability is truly impacting that child the most. Next slide, please. When you consider special education services, we're required that we have to exhaust all areas, all levels of support after considering the use of accommodations, interventions, and only when students need more. And this is where I'm going to ask one of our two principals to chime in, because I know they do a lot already within our Tier 1.
Sure, I'll go ahead and start. So our Tier 1 interventions are what happens in the classroom every day. And so our teachers, how they differentiate for students, might be small group, it might be some behavior modification or incentive plans. It might be the use of our aide or intern to just kind of target skills and create some access for the students that might just be a little different than some of the typical peers. If that doesn't work, after they've made some adjustments, they go into maybe the SST process, which means student success team. And that is the opportunity for families, teachers, our education specialists as consults, anyone who might be working with a student and an administrator to sit down and kind of talk about the needs, create some goals that we can measure, and then brainstorm additional supports. And some of those might include what we call Tier 2 supports, which is an extra level, such as our reading interventionists or our literacy interventionists to support on those goals. And then we monitor those goals. If those goals with all these supports and the student isn't meeting the goals or isn't making the projected progress, then we might say, consider what we call an assessment plan to see if that child would qualify for special education services with one of the disabilities that Ms. Ridgway had already discussed today.
Thank you, Principal Bowders. Ms. Ridgway, can I speak a little bit about Tier 1 and the idea of inclusivity?
Yes, please.
So in days past, folks, we had self-contained classrooms where kids that needed extra support, extra needs had to go into a whole separate classrooms of 5 to 10 to 12 kids. And really, they would be called out from the mainstream of the rest of the students. That system came to an end. And our goal and our responsibility collectively, because we're not a get in and fit in one size fits all approach to education, is to be able to include all of our students in the classroom setting and to provide accommodations and supports for what's happening in the classroom. Principal Bowders talked a little bit about differentiation. Some kids might need a different approach. It's our responsibility to be able to use all the resources that we have to ensure that the needs of each and every student, we're meeting their needs at their level. And that's happening with the other kids in that class, and not in small self-contained classrooms or some other nook and cranny of a school where we're taking our SPED kids out in the first 5 to 10 minutes and they're being taught by an instructional assistant or an aide. So that's our focus, that's our goal, and that's a little bit about being truly inclusive and making sure that we're meeting the needs of each and every one of our students at their level.
Thank you, Principal Trackus. Next slide, please. Again, as we are going through our systems of support, we also consider what else is needed in order to support our students. So Ms. Curiano or Dr. Diaz, if you want to chime in.
Sure. I mean, I think that, Greta and Andy they've already addressed the different tiers. Just knowing that tier 1 that you see here is that the general classroom teacher support, that's what all kids get. That's at tier 1 level. And again, if understanding if students need more, then taking them to tier 2. And then if that's still not working, taking them to tier 3. One of the things we really do look at is you see the UDL down there, that's Universal Design for Learning. And that just means that we try and give kids a variety of choices so that no matter where they are at, they can access the curriculum. And that is a tier 1 support that we do in our classrooms. Also, I think that Jose and I might have spoken to this already when we had an earlier evenings with admin earlier in the school year, but when we were talking about multi-tiered systems of support, the middle school has done a lot of training in this area this year. And I'll let Mr. Diaz or Mr. Trackus speak to that more if they would like to. The elementary school was just given a $50,000 grant. And we're going to be working on developing more training for our staff as well, so that we really are working at that continuum of providing more enhanced multi-tiered systems of support for all of our kids.
So Dr. Diaz, I told him not to come tonight because he's sick. So I know he's going to want to chime in, but let me just kind of talk about a few things in the idea of MTSS, multi-tiered systems of support. What does that mean? And that comes out of what we call a response to intervention, RTI, which was something that we started working on 15 years ago, maybe more than that, and PBIS, which is positive behaviors intervention and support, right? Meaning that, hey, we need to find incentives and work with kids and focus on the positives and build them up through developing strong, powerful, transformative relationships with our kids. And the combination of those two comes to, and we're throwing in a lot of letters here, and the MTSS, the multi-tiered systems of support. And what does that mean? That means that we've inventoried and we're bringing together and have outlined all of the resources that we can provide for our students and for our teachers. And all those resources and supports happen at what we call the tier 1 level, meaning in the classroom, the regular classroom, right? How we're providing additional supports for our kids, how we're meeting the needs of their accommodations in the classrooms. And if it's not working for some of our kiddos, then we look at a smaller environment, which we call tier 2. And we'd be able to continue to double down on those interventions, those accommodations, and those supports. And again, just like anything, if that's not working and we're not providing the supports and meeting the needs of that particular child, then we look at a more intense, a tier 3 approach to how we work with our kids. But we're very, very proud of our efforts in MTSS. We started rolling out, we were one of the, we were working with the San Diego County Office of Education back in 2018, 2019 school year. And then we had some momentum going, and then COVID hit. But now our challenge is to be able to, how we vertically align between both of our schools. So there's very clear expectations, there's a model, and we can be able to transition our students from elementary to middle with the same clear expectation, with the same model, and with the same service. And that's our hope and spirit in our MTSS initiative.
Next slide, please. And so what do we mean by more? As you can see, we try to exhaust everything we can possibly can. And what you see here are ed codes. These are ed codes that is designed to guide schools in how to determine whether or not we've truly exhausted. And it's to remind us that in order for us to move forward with special education services, or even consideration for special education services, we need to be able to document and identify that we've exhausted the resources within our general education setting. We also have to remember that it's not due to a lack of instruction in reading or in math, as well as a language proficiency, which is why we really want to make sure and ensure that our students who are multilingual learners, English language learners, have that access so that we don't misidentify that language for a disability. Next slide, please. How are students identified for special education services? There are two different ways. By law, we have a thing called child find. I think you have seen from our website, as well as our message, our leadership message that comes out periodic or every 2 weeks, that we post opportunities for the public to, if they identify or they have observed or witnessed a student having some special needs, they are welcome to contact our school or any school site across San Diego County, district, even at the state or even federal level. Anytime that you observe the child might need or suspect that they have a profound disability, you can contact a school. The school will make their effort to reach out to the families. We can't just go in and say, hey, your child gets services, but a big part of this, and I'll talk a little bit more on the next slide, is the evaluation process. We still are required to evaluate our students in order for us to even consider them for services. Another area is anyone, basically including our staff and our parents, can make a request or referral for evaluation. We oftentimes, as both principals shared, we want to make sure we've had an opportunity to utilize the interventions we've put in place. However, there might be time where a parent may request it, and we will honor it by responding to a parent. As I shared earlier, we're bound by legal timeframes. And so oftentimes there are a certain amount of days that we have to respond to a family when there is a request. And so we want to make sure we're able to respond in a timely manner. But when there is a request for evaluation, oftentimes one of the school site members will respond to the family member requesting. If there is a need and we can consider the student study team first, we would usually move in that direction prior to evaluation. However, it doesn't mean we won't evaluate. We just want to make sure we've exhausted all of the resources we possibly can. Next slide, please. As I shared, this is the process that we go through in special education. We always start with assessment. We cannot even talk about services, goals, even the student's area of need without assessment. Our assessment drives almost everything we do. It helps determine our students, first of all, their area of need. And if needed, we determine their goals and the type of services that are required to support those goals. We're also required to provide progress. It's part of the role to monitor if our students are making educational gains. And then each and every year, by law, on or before the annual due date, we have to hold a review. Doesn't mean we only do it one time a year. We just by law, we were required to do it one time a year, but we can do as often as needed for a student. And every 3 years, we have a reevaluation, which determines whether or not our student still requires those services. The disability will often remain. However, as a team, we have to determine, is that disability still impacting that student enough that it requires services? Next slide, please. As I shared, the evaluation is an important process for us because we have to answer these questions. The first is whether or not the child has a disability that requires the provision of special education and related services. What are the student's educational needs? And then if special education and related services are appropriate for addressing those needs. If you heard me share already, a child may have a disability. However, we have to determine whether or not that disability is impacting that child enough that warrants services. And so that usually is the question that we have to answer in order for us to just provide or determine services for our students. We have to, in order for us to truly complete the evaluation process, is to be able to assess the child in all areas of suspected disability. Again, based on those 13 categories that I shared earlier, each of those categories have criterias. And so as an assessment team, we have to go through based on the results of our assessment to determine appropriately where or what that child's needs are and how, and defining what area of disability is impacting them the most. Next slide, please. As I've kind of reviewing myself here, once the evaluation is complete, the IEP team reconvenes. And as I shared, there is a timeline for our students when we are completing assessment. There is a 60-day timeline. For most of our teams, we try to complete it by the 60th day. We are required by law to hold our meeting by the 60th day. For some teams, it depends. Most of us can finish some of that assessment sooner, but we like to be as thorough as we can. So we do exhaust the full 60 days to determine if the child has a disability. And the second part of the process is, again, to determine whether or not specialized services are required in order for us, or in order for that child to have access to his or her academics. The goal and intent of special education is to enable students with special needs to reach their fullest potential. And so, as I shared, and I'm going to keep sharing, is our goal in special ed is not to say, hey, the child has gone is no longer has a disability because we've cured his or her reading deficit. Our goal is that we want to teach our child the proper tools, the strategies, share with them what accommodation is the most appropriate for them in order for them to access their learning. We have to rightfully calculate what level of services our child needs in order to meet his or her IEP goals. Therefore, there are times when we will adjust service minutes depending on the kind of progress our students are making. And so when they are not making progress, oftentimes the team will reconvene to determine what else is missing, what else do we need to provide. Or if the student is making progress, we need to celebrate that. And when I say celebrate, it's a great opportunity for our students to see their progress and possibly exiting out of some of those services, because it's a way for them to tell us that they're learning some of those strategies and they're able to do it independently. However, there's going to be students that will continue to need these services on to the age of 22. Next slide, please. At AEA, as you heard our staff share already, special education is a service, not a placement. Our goal is to provide our services within our general education classrooms. However, least restrictive environment doesn't mean we can never pull a kid outside of that general education environment. What we want to do is, again, provide as much as we can within general education, either with or without support, because there are students with a disability, with an IEP, that can participate in general education classes that doesn't warrant an actual direct support. What they might require would be a teacher collaborating with the general ed teacher to look at what accommodations need to be naturally put in place. We also have general education classrooms that are supported by our education specialists, our paraeducator. Time to time, we have our related service providers, and I'll define who they are late in the next slide. will also go into our general education classroom to provide their services there. As we go down, you'll see that it gets, you'll see the services become more and more restrictive. So we also have specialized classrooms that are instructed by our education specialists, paraeducator, or related service providers. As you can see here, specialized support such as one-to-one, they actually are considered a more restrictive support, because one thing that we need to be mindful of is, as much as we want our child to have as much support as possible, we also have to think about their level of independence. And so we need to constantly monitor how we're providing their opportunities to gain that independence, to do things on their own, to see if they're actually generalizing the tools that we're sharing or teaching them. And so I like to always consider all the resources within the classroom setting prior to looking at a one-to-one. However, it doesn't mean we don't consider it, because there are some children who need that high level of support. And then if and when there are specialized schools, home instruction, instruction in the hospitals, as well as institutions like residential facilities, which is the most restrictive setting, we often, as a goal, not just at AEA, but across, we're challenged by federal law to really look at our setting and how we're delivering services. And so this year, I'm working closely with our teams at the elementary and middle school to look at how are we delivering services to our students? Are they appropriate? Are they meaningful? Are our students truly getting access to the general education content? And what else can we do to provide those accessibility? Next slide, please. We, as a supporting staff, as you can see here, general education teachers are first. Just because a student is identified as a student with a disability or is given an IEP, we want to constantly recognize that they are general education students first, which is why our general ed teachers are also considered service providers. Our ed specialists, they play two roles. They're case managers, which is usually the point of contact for contacting parents with regards to their child's IEP. And they're also service providers. They provide direct services to our students. By Ed Code in California, there is a caseload of a 1 to 28. At AEA, we are doing our best to ensure that our ed specialists have those opportunity by making sure their caseload is manageable. Currently, our caseloads are really manageable, so our ed specialists are able to connect with families, connect with teachers, as well as to be able to gauge what type of services our students need. We also have paraeducators who are an extension of our education specialists. They're not in lieu of, but they follow through on the plan that our education, as well as our general education teachers, provide to them. Related service providers within, again, depending on the student's needs, we have both campuses school psychologists as well as interns who provide direct services to our students. School counselor, we have an occupational therapist, speech and language pathologist. We have a behavior team. This year we actually onboarded a board certified behavior analyst, a BCBA, and a behavior technician. The goal is to look at and consider what types of behaviors are impacting our students' needs, our students' academic access. And so their goal and their job is to work with our school site teams to provide them strategies, coach, model, and then also provide some direct support to our students. And again, as an LEA, if we're not able to provide some of these services, we do look outside of our LEA or our side, our two schools, and we contract with agencies that can provide services that we're not able to do in-house. Next slide, please. And so that in a nutshell, is what special education services looks like at AEA. I know I covered a lot. I probably could cover a lot more, especially going deeper into the individualized education plan or program. It's interchangeable. And I'm happy to entertain questions if anyone has any. On the very last slide, slide 16, I also connected you all with resources. I think it's important, as I shared with you, to know where these resources are coming from. So these are direct resources coming from the California Department of Education. CAS, as you do, is known for their universal design for learning. They provide plenty, like a plethora of resources for both the school as well as families. And then understood.org is a website that I often go to, even as the director of special ed, because there are times where I just want to clarify for myself, like, what are people talking about? And so they simplify it quite a bit. And so it's actually my go-to for some resources, and I like to connect families with the understood.org. And then again, there's videos here on MTSS, as well as my favorite actually is this last one, the U.S. Department of Special Education. It talks a lot about where our state is going in providing services for our families and our schools, and guiding our schools to look at the least restrictive opportunities to serve our students. And so again, our goal at AEA is considering all the things that we can possibly provide in our general education or tier 1 level before adding an additional support to our students. With that, I appreciate your time, but again, I'm welcome to entertain any questions.
Great. Thank you very much, everybody, for your presentation, your comments at the various areas. I'm going to open this up, I guess, to questions. If anybody has any, I don't see any questions in the chat room. I see some thank yous in the chat room, but I don't see any specific questions. So I don't know if anybody wants to speak up, please do so. Maybe
Mr.
people. Oh, okay. Yeah, Matt.
Hi, Grace. How's it going? I saw in your list of personnel that seem to be under your reported to the speech therapy. And it's come to my attention recently with my son needing speech therapy and some other parents that had a need for speech therapy, that was a limited resource in that the person who you have, it's been conveyed to us that their plate is full. And so getting to the children whose needs aren't as great may not happen at school. And so I had two questions for you. The first question was, are only children that fall under the categories that you mentioned earlier, I think there were like 13 or 16 that would qualify for special education, are those children given preference to speech therapy, or are they the only children that get speech therapy at school? Number one. And number two, if there were to be found a need for another speech therapist, is that something that would sort of happen through special education?
To answer your first question, with the service providers that I listed, including the speech pathologists, their primary service is to our students who are currently identified with a speech and language need. One thing I do want to clarify with regards to if there was a request or if there was a need to consider, I do want our families to know that we do monitor that. Sometimes we're not able to provide some direct or consultative services in that moment. However, part of, and I didn't add this to our continuum of services, is we do a lot of collaboration with our general ed teachers, especially at the very early grade levels. We go into the classroom, we provide some strategies, we collaborate with them directly it also gives us an opportunity to do some very quick observation of the class and which students might need what. And then we work through the general education teachers. So your son may not be getting the direct services because he may not qualify for those services just yet. What we are doing right now, we might be looking at specifically what interventions we can put in place in the classrooms and then try to exhaust those interventions. However, with the speech pathologists collaborating very closely with the general ed teachers. With regards to our allocation of staff, that's a very, we're driven by the needs of our students. But special education, in order for us to consider these services, we have to evaluate our students. And that's how the services are determined.
What if the resource is so limited that the evaluation doesn't happen because time is being spent on the group that has a higher need? So the actual evaluation doesn't happen because of that resource limitation.
So that shouldn't impact. I think it really depends on your son's need, and we can take this offline to really determine what it is that is impacting him. And I can look further into whether or not even our speech pathologist has been consulted, but that shouldn't be a factor. That's something that as a LEA, if there is a need to add more staff, then we would consider it. But again, without really knowing the details of your son's need, I can't really speak to what has been completed or what has been advised with the general ed teachers, even the school site leadership team. So I'd be happy to contact you and talk a little bit more about his needs offline.
Great. Are there any other, I see that there's one question in the chat room, but it's a little bit off topic. So is there any other questions that, in the interest of time, I want to respect everybody's time. So we've got another 8 minutes before we usually try and wrap this up about 6:30. So we keep it to about an hour. Are there any other questions related to special education for Grace or the other administrators? I don't know if I see any hands raised, but I think I'll take the silence as no. So we do have a question from Anthony, and some of you guys might have seen it in the chat box, but his question is switching gears, not talking about special education, but talking about the science teacher, which appears to be on maybe medical leave or she's been out sick. And so Anthony's question is, what is the plan for a backup science teacher? Is there any way, what are the challenges to give kids backup a science education when the main teacher is sick? So, and just as a side note, I think some people might also think about the gardening special teacher that was, I don't know if that's been what the plan is for that. And so I think with both of those, I'll chime in with, or throw in about the gardening question as well as the science. So maybe Principal Bowders can address that.
Sure. In terms of, I can't specify too much about the HR piece of this because it is a medical leave. It was not a planned medical leave. I will say that we have proactively, since we found out about it, been looking and pursuing a good candidate to substitute for that position. That our teacher was supposed to be back, and we just again learned that is going to be prolonged. And so we have actively been looking. It is not an easy position to fill, based on, and we've posted in various areas. With the gardening teacher as well, that is another tricky one. We've posted that one since last spring, and we haven't had a candidate who has the proper credential. It's a sticky credential because it does require some a specialty in a science area plus a multiple subject credential. And it's not a full-time position, so it's been a hard one to fill. And so we've actively been doing it. And that's where we are. The science one, again, I'm interviewing somebody tomorrow or Friday again to fill that, but I don't want to fill it with somebody who's not going to do the program justice.
Great, thank you. Anyone else have any questions? guess maybe we'll wrap up a few minutes early if everyone's okay with that. Well, thank you again for everybody. Thank you for the interpreters. Thank you for administration. Thank you for all the parents joining. I think it was a great topic, and we look forward to seeing you guys next month for the next evening with administration. And thank you again. Hope you have a wonderful evening.
Thank you, Christine. Have a wonderful evening.
Thank
everybody.
you. Bye.